Welcome, my loves, to my channel. Welcome back, I should say. In this episode, we are going to explore the five major genres and look at the subgenres therein and also the authors that write in these various genres. Now, I have to just let you know, I did not know. Like I knew there were subgenres, but I didn't know one that there were, more popular ones. But I have to say that I did not know that there were subgenres within each. Some of you all may know that. I don't know that. I didn't know that. So it was good to kind of see and like because my subgenre is romantasy. I would consider the books that I write more on the romance end, but it pulls in a little bit of magic and it pulls in a little bit of paranormal. My genre as I know it is magical realism, but it was really nice to just look at this list. So this episode we are going to explore that. But thing that I want you to most key into is where your first novel, or if you're coming in here and you are a writer, you have written a book already, you may also key into, okay, what other genres would you like to write within, and also where you would want to explore the different subgenres. So this episode promises to be so amazing, and I am hoping that you get everything from it. So let's get into it. So remember in the first episode, I told you one that I come out the gate. There's no delay in this. We are about to get into it. But the one thing I want to make sure to tell you is to grab your notebook. Notebooks are so essential in the writing process, at least for me. For every novel that I write, I always have a dedicated notebook. So grab your notebook for your notes. Get that good pen. I told y'all mine is a G2 Pilot. Gotta have it. Bold. Blue is my favorite. And I think the last thing I would say is to make sure that you set up your playlist. There will be, as we move along, there will be other writers that I will refer to for you to check out their channels as well. And I would say also get that drink of choice. Get that drink of choice. This morning I made a rose cardamom latte with black tea, with Earl Grey black tea. It was delicious. I'm like at the last drop and I'm like trying to savor it. Water, wine, spritz water, whatever. Get your drink of choice. And we are going to get right into it. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say is that I know this format is different. Your girl is trying to learn all the ins and outs of recording, but one thing I have to say that I appreciate when I'm sort of picking notes or learning, I like to have a really polished background. So I'm talking and I will have, as a part of my channel, I will have other times where I'm just talking off the cuff or you'll see me writing or whatever. But for these particular videos, I want to use this format because I want to make sure that I'm delivering an amazing product. I don't want to say product, but I want to be able to say that I'm, delivering an amazing presentation to you. So as I said before, before we go through the five different or most popular genres, I want you to be looking at where your interest, what piques your interest as far as the various genres. I know for me, when I was a little girl, I used to write books. You remember the white composition notebooks? I would take those notebooks and I would write 80 pages of with the three structure act. I knew it. Well, I was an avid reader too. I could read 8 books in a week, probably because I stayed punished all the time. But my mom allowed me to go to the library at least because reading was what she believed in. But anyway, I knew from then that romance was because even at 9 years old, I was writing about romance. I was way too grown. But then as I got older and I really just lived a little bit of life, and that's the thing that this channel is about. Like, you living your life, you live life, and so you have stories to tell. And so for me, when I wrote my first novel, Magnolias Bloom in May, for me, it was really about adding that sense of magic within my novels, or that paranormal, which we'll see is one of the subgenres in the underneath the romance genre. So I want you to be thinking about, through this whole time, where where you are interested in writing, and where you're writing, what genre you're writing would fit best. Okay, so remember when in the last episode I gave you 4 reflection questions that I wanted you to think about? One of the things that I found, people write from their experience as a novelist. Um, they can hide it behind characterization. They can hide it behind world building. They can hide it, but when you write, you are really writing from your own experience. And so, the 4 reflection questions I gave you last episode were the following, that I want you to either bring back out, and if you didn't quite finish them, make sure you finish them, because honestly, you're going to write from your lived experience, right? So the first question was, list 3 to 5 key lessons learned over your life to date. When you look over your life, describe 3 to 5 experiences that impacted you deeply. What are 3 obstacles you had to overcome that taught lessons you live by today? And finally, if you had to sum it all up, what is the one key message you want to relay? I know for me, in my first novel, Magnolias Bloom in May, it was the message I wanted to relay was that despite things that life lived experiences, whether, the pain that was experienced in life, you always come out on the other side of finding your joy, your vindication, and yourself, right? In my second novel, In the Next Lifetime, I really wanted to explore the idea of a past life with a love, um, and just how that plays out in a way, and making the hard choice of, do you go with, engaging a love from a past life, when you got that sort of, like, we've been here before sort of relationship with a person, and then choosing obligation of what you have built now. Like, it's like the spiritual versus the now, the past spiritual versus the now. And so, it was fun to play with that. And at the time, I remember when I was writing, um, In the Next Lifetime, at the time, there was someone that I had met, or that I had known for a while, but I was with someone at the same time, and I was exploring, like, oh my God, I felt this particular deepened connection with this other person, but because I was in this obligatory relationship with, money and, and children and bank accounts and life, like, integrated and intermingle. What do you work with first? Do you throw caution to the wind and you go with that love that you met and have this connection to, or do you keep up with obligations? So that was the question that I was battling. But again, right, like, this is what I mean when I say that you do really write from your experience. So what I would like for you to do is really take these questions seriously, because what you're going to find is as you write, you're going to find these themes coming up throughout your work in progress. So we are going to review the 5 most popular genres that authors are writing in today. That would be romance, fantasy, science fiction, historical fiction, and mystery. As I said, when I when I was preparing this video, I was like, oh my God, okay, what are the 5? Like, I know of some, and I knew there were different genres, but I had never like seen it up close. So it was really nice to look at understand the various genres, or the most popular genres that are out there. And as we go through as we review each of them, I would love for you to just kind of have your mind going like, where does my voice fit next? What am I interested in? Ooh, why am I interested in that? Like for me, romance, all things love, 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 love. It's like just what I appreciate, right? But I do appreciate also a little bit of mystery. You may find that you have 2 different like sort of genres that you are interested in, and you may be able to marry them. I know like in my second book, In the Next Lifetime, the one that I was so interested in adding some mystery into that, and there's this thread underneath of, for the main male character, like, who is he? Like, he had this mystique about him, and it was important for me to keep that thread throughout, like his background and who he was. Like, it was, so I married like both romance and mystery, and then like I wove in some fantasy because I had these sort of angels and deities kind of surfacing. So I was able to weave through different aspects, right? So I want you to just be considering as we go through each, like which genre works for you. And pay attention to the authors too, because if you find that there's a particular genre that you're interested in, note the authors that are that write within that genre, because you may be interested in picking up some of their books. And one of the things in a future episode I'm going to talk about is really, kind of some tips that I use to like fuel my own creative process. And sometimes it includes reading other authors that write within that genre. Like currently, my next book, That Day in August, that's coming out in June, or not June, we're going to say summer 2026. I've learned that the hard way of giving a date, and people are looking for your book and they're like, oh my God, where's the book? You said June. But so I learned how to say, just give a season and a year. But the current book that I'm looking through, that I'm working on right now, is it kind of interweaves the same mystery. But I'm so right now, like as a part of my to be read list, there is I'm reading Kennedy Ryan's next book, and I'm reading Southern Gothic, like weird, but so apropos for what I'm writing now. So pay attention to the genre, the main genre, but also pay attention to the authors and the subgenre as we review. Okay, so for the first genre, of course, it's going to be romance, because it's the genre that I just absolutely love. Romance, romance, the romance genre is exactly what it says, right? It's really, really engaging in love and connection, and in all things relationships, right? There's usually a slow burn, there's a build up, there's this thing of, the main male or main female, or, if the novel is or partnership of same sex relationship. Like there's always this, these two people being in this conundrum of wanting the other, and there's always sort of this slow build up of finally getting to that love interest, right? And there's obstacles, there's issues, there's and you're going through the ups and downs of this main first main character getting to this second main character. There's always this, and you're sitting in your chair, you're rooting like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I need this to happen, I need this to happen. So yes, so that's the whole the romance genre in a nutshell. A couple of books that I'm reading, like I told you before. For me, can you see it? Okay, yes. For me, this year, I am reading Can't Get Enough. I've read her whole other series, that the two books that goes before this, but this was the latest for this particular series. So Kennedy Ryan, and then another book that I really loved, that was amazing, that I read this last year. Tia Williams, A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. And this book, interestingly enough, kind of crossed a couple of things. Remember, I talked to you about how in my novels I was able to cross something, cross some things. But this novel crossed into spirit, added a spiritual loop in there. So like one of the subgenres, and you can see these here, of this is paranormal, and A Love Song for Ricky Wilde really sort of entered into that. So you can really take a spin on your romance novels in a way that you can, but you'll always have that underlyingness of that underlying message of, uh, of love, right, and connection. And as you can see, there are different authors there. Check those out. Kennedy Ryan is named under there, but also check out the other authors there that may pique your interest. Go to Amazon, or just go to their web pages and read about the stories that they've written. But check those out and consider adding to your library. Okay, so now we look at the fantasy genre. Fantasy is otherworldly, right? It is bringing in mythical creatures. This is where you get into world building. And I mean, to be clear, there's always world building in there's always world building in every novel, but fantasy really gets into building this world, and these characters that interact within this world where they're otherworldly, right? You may get into dragons and imps and witches, and and there's a whole system, right? There's a whole system of how they operate within this world, and there's rules, and there may be a language or whatever. There's codes and ways of being, and like I will tell you, for me, authors that are able to write fantasy, like I do, like I said, I do world building, character building, in every novel you do, but those who are able to write fantasy, like pure out and out fantasy, like major respect, major respect, because like I'm like just and like what and me looking at authors that really deal exclusively with them, that write exclusively fantasy novels, like it's a paint. They spend like months on, first building the world, and then they're building the code, and then I think they're building characters, and then they and some books, which I'm always astounded by the cover art, because the cover art is so beautiful, because they have to really relay, looking at that the cover of that book, they really have to relay what you're going to read about in the novel. So I am always astounded, and just major respect for me, for those who are able to write these sorts of books. One of the authors that I really really love, is Marlon James. Usually their books are really thick. So, but Black Leopard, Red Wolf was so great. But he writes in this fantasy genre, and so you know, if this piques your interest, and you have the patience, if you have the patience to write this kind of narrative, then ciao, hats off to you. But this would be the genre that would work for you. So the next genre would be sci-fi or science fiction. I will tell you quite honestly, this genre is not one that the only the I've read one sci-fi author, here, Tananarive Due, um, and but Octavia Butler is also a very well-known sci-fi writer. Science fiction really, I think it does deal with it does with world building, and there's a code, but science fiction is really interested in the impact of science, right, on humanity, and like, and what that impact, what that causes, what that produces. um I think about a couple of movies that kind of played with this. It's a Will Smith movie that I just for the life of me uh, cannot remember. If you remember it, put it in put it in the comments. Help me to remember. But it definitely deals with you know there's a world building, there's a code, and there's sort of this apocalyptic sort of feel of like, this thing happened, and as a result, this is how we live now. And so it really explores, I know, like, before COVID came out, I don't know if you all remember, there was another movie, there were a few movies actually that came out predicting this pandemic, and what or a pandemic, not this particular one, but a pandemic that had effects on life and how we live life thereafter. Um, I want to say Matrix, the Matrix, another sci-fi movie, that could be considered. I don't have any. I'm looking at my bookshelf is over here. I don't have any sci-fi books that on hand and in physical copy. On my Kindle, I do have a couple by Tananarive Due. But if you love science, I am intrigued by science. I'm intrigued by scientific thought, but I'm not like, ooh, but if this feels like home for you, consider the sci-fi genre. Okay, so for our next genre of historical fiction, I will say, for me personally, I am intrigued by authors that are able to take events that happened in the past, and either bringing a present spin on it, or sort of pulling out various aspects or a particular aspect to key in on, and to create a narrative around that. So that's basically it's this particular genre explores taking an historical fact or a historical time in life, and really creating a whole world and a whole narrative around that particular event in history. So when I think about that, I think about the biblical stories that we've watched on, we watch around Christmas time um, or around Easter. Um, Toni Morrison, Kristen Hanna, those are a couple of authors that, take historical events and really kind of elongate and stretch and show a different aspect. I love history. I have to say that this is one genre that I would really like to explore a little bit more, because when I was growing up, I really had, I really appreciated um, the Bible, but oftentimes my mind was always thinking, what really happened? We got the scriptures, we got a little bit of background, but like, what really happened? What were the people thinking when this was going on? What were they thinking? What was the timbre and the energy and the buzz? What were the spectators? Are there key spectators that could add a dimension to this one moment in time? Another thing that I love exploring is African storytelling, which they would call a pataki. And I've often thought about, man, like, I would love to take a pataki. It's sort of like this word is escaping me. Words escape me. Perimenopause has a whole thing, but a parable is the word. Parable is what I was thinking of. Patakis are parables that really focus on, African deities or orishas. And I often wanted to take Pataki. I might think about it, not right now. I have like 2 other books to write before I even get to that. But I often think about that and taking those stories and pulling them apart and really adding some meat and bones onto it, as opposed to what it's trying to teach. So anyway, so that is the historical fiction genre. Consider, if you like history or have a thing for history, consider that genre. That would be a perfect space for you to land your next novel. So, mystery. Hmm. I really appreciate this. And I think in some ways, there's always a bit of mystery, right? Underlying every novel. But mystery, the genre of mystery, always has you asking the questions, and asking the questions of what really happened, right? And so you really do have to pay attention to the layering. There's a layering in mystery that you really, really do have to pay attention to what's being said, but also what's being not said. For me, I would tell you, like, um, a former girlfriend of mine, she really, really loved the whole mystery thing. And I'm gonna tell you, for me, I'm not, my my mind doesn't work in a mystical way. And so, but my a former girlfriend of mine, she would watch, mysteries. We'll watch a movie together, and she'll be like, "Did you see that? Did you catch that?" And I would be like, "What?" Would be like, "Okay, like, no." And so it wasn't, and she would always have to explain to me at the end, because remember and remember and remember, and I'd be like, "Oh, I am like Johnny come lately to the mystery party." So, um, but the next novels that I'm writing, there's a sequel to In the Next Lifetime that I'm writing. I'll start outlining that soon. I can't even. I'm like in the middle of my current whipping process, work in progress. But I'm wanting to do more of that, because my book after the sequel of Internet, or the sequel book to In the Next Lifetime, is going to include some mystery where, and I don't have a clue as to how to write it. So what I am currently reading, This Cursed House, This is on my to be read list for 2026, which it's Southern Gothic is the genre, but there's this whole, like, mystery gives you that eeriness. There's an eeriness behind it, right? And there's always, it's like the opening of a door and it creaks open. That's the kind of energy it gives. So I've started reading it, and every page you're like, oh my God, just trying to get down what is happening, and so that it gives you that feel. Another author that I read, which was really lovely, by Danye Coles, Midnight Rooms. This was a great one, and it gave that sense of eeriness, and you're trying to figure out what is going on. So if you love that sort of, I always think that mystery writers always have a sense of this sense of conspiracy theory. Like, there's something is behind something is behind something is behind something. But if this feels like home for you, consider picking up novels to read, just to kind of get a sense of the format. You don't have to copy anyone's format, but I always use authors as a springboard for my own ideas. Okay, so we have new reflection questions. We've just gone through all of the five genres, or major five genres. We've looked at the subgenres. We've also looked at the different authors that write within those subgenres. So I want to now, as we're about to close this particular episode, I want to pull your thinking to new questions to consider as you think about where your interest is peaked to start writing your first novel or second novel, or however many, but to just start thinking about what that would look like for you. So with the new reflection questions, one would be, where do you think your message, your voice and your message fall? Which genre feels right for you in that regard? What books have you read as of late, or in the past? And I would say, look at your bookshelf. So, for my bookshelf, I have romance, I have mystery, I have, paranormal. Though that's what feels home for me. And I will tell you, that's the kind of books I write. And so look at your book list. I mean, your book bookshelf, and that will give you some indication of where your interest lies, and where your novel, where the next novel you may want to write. What are some shows and movies that you're attracted to? Like, for me, I watch on repeat, y'all. I watch on repeat Scandal. Right now I'm watching, I'm like, for the second or third time, I'm watching Blackish. Um, Parenthood is another one of my favorite uh, shows. But what shows do you watch? What shows are you attracted to that, that piques your interest in? And if you can look at those, that may be some indication of where your voice and the novel that you would want to write. Finally, thinking of both of these, both the mechanism of the written word, and the mechanism of, visual art, or TV shows or movies. What 3 to 5 characters are you most attracted to, and why? So, like, I'm watching Blackish now, and I so love I'm so in love right now with Dre, and just um and Charlie. Go figure. I don't even know, but I'm so attracted to those two. In Scandal, like, whenever I watch Scandal, and I watch it incessantly, it's I probably you probably should call for help. You should call for help. Um, you know, I like to be honest, like Olivia Pope is the main character, but I love Huck. Huck is Huck was crazy, but he was brilliant at the same time. So I'm really attracted to Huck. So look at the characters that you're attracted to. I'm just well, that's not a book, but I just finished reading Mama Day, which is a sort of a, that it's romance, but it has a paranormal sort of spin on it. And Mama Day, I loved the two grandmothers actually, I didn't really pay attention to the main character. I really paid attention to the two grandmothers that were working the scenes. Miranda, and there's another one that I'm forgetting. It's slipping my mind. But pay attention to the characters that you love, because that may identify as a main character in your next novel. Thank you so much for joining me for the second episode. Oh my God. And it is long, y'all. It is 35, almost 40 minutes. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you for joining me for this time. So, we talked about the different genres, the five different genres. We explored the subgenres. We explored various authors within those genres, and you got a chance to really begin to reflect on where your voice and your next story would fit best. What I would encourage, you to do is, like I said, if it, go to Amazon or Goodreads or whatever, and look at these different authors and get a couple of books. Get maybe one book out of the different genres that you find intriguing or that piques your interest for your first, second, or whatever novel. And yeah, and just begin to explore, begin to read, and play around with thoughts that you have in your head. And so for the next episode, we are actually going to begin to do some brainstorming, and I'll lead you into some exercises where you can start to brainstorm what your first or second or third, or just even some preliminary thoughts for the novel that you are going to write. So I will see you soon, and have a great rest of your day.